Thank you all for being here. 11th Hour Racing really welcomes you. I know how many other things there are going on and how busy everybody is. And I'm Wendy Schmidt, if I haven't met you earlier. And I want to tell you that before we get started with our wonderful panel, that I had an experience of my life today, going out with the team on the boat during some practice races. I would liken it to the first time man saw fire. Or maybe the first time somebody was shot up in a rocket. It was absolutely phenomenal. I think I will never be the same. Thank you, Ben. It was just amazing. In fact, on one of our first races, the tactician rounded the mark. We had a fabulous start, and then we were on a different course from everybody else. And I think he said, well, I guess we didn't win that race. So it's important to know what course we're on. We agreed about that, right? And I'd like to talk about a course I think we're on here together, which is a very, very good course. And I'm really here to open a conversation with everybody about an extraordinary revolution that is going on quietly around the world. And it's in the decisions individuals are making. It's in the decisions corporations are beginning to make, in the way regulations are beginning to look at our carbon emissions, and the impact of these things, and also in the way our children are making decisions about what they buy, and the things they own, the cars, the television sets, the solar panels, or the smart technology that they are interested in. So before I get to our panel, also I want to tell you why 11th Hour Racing is involved at all with this team. There's the obvious question why a group that's based in Newport, Rhode Island would be here helping Britain to bring the cup back. Yeah? So the answer to that, the quick answer, the first answer is that Ben asked us. And he knew that the success of a team that wanted to wrap itself in sustainability would actually cost more than the normal bottom line, doing things the same old way. And so that would take a sustainability partner. And he heard of our work, working with other sailing teams to follow performance with a purpose and to work on and off the water to do that. I had served on the organizing committee in San Francisco during the last America's Cup race, and I was very close to the greening of the city, or the attempt to do that in San Francisco. And I came away from that experience hoping there would really be a team who wanted to embrace these ideas, because it's such a natural platform when you think about sailing. And to really think and share with its fans, because there are so many of them, smarter ways of using materials and thinking about the life cycle of everything that it uses. And the second reason that we're here is that the challenges that are being addressed in this way are worldwide. They're global, and it doesn't belong to any country. It happens everywhere in every country. And so to use this opportunity to make some progress that we can share with the rest of the world seems very worthwhile to me, making positive change for everybody. So tonight I am joined by some wonderful panelists who can help tell you the story and about the promise of what can happen when we consciously think about the way we use energy and water and materials and the life cycle of everything to create a regenerative and circular economy. So technological innovation is important, but also bold investment from philanthropy and from commercial sources, the conscious use and reuse of materials. This is what's going to drive all of this. So with us tonight, you all know Andy Claughton, I think. He's, of course, one of the world's most accomplished and experienced America's Cup designers. He's been involved with the Cup since 1983. He's made many contributions to marine technology and industrial dynamics and has brought these advances to the America's Cup teams. Dr. Susie Tomson holds a doctorate in integrated coastal management and is a consultant on sustainability to Team Land Rover BAR, brings her deep experience supporting and delivering sustainability programs and commitments for major sporting events, including the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games and the Ryder Cup. Roy Bedlow is next, Chief Executive and co-founder of Low Carbon, a company investing in operating and owning renewable energy projects, including photovoltaic, concentrated solar, wind, and anaerobic digestion. You are also a founding member with Sir Richard Branson of the Carbon War Room, which focuses on removing market barriers that reinforce the status quo and prevent the movement of capital into sustainable and solutions that provide compelling returns. I think that's right. And finally, Richard Jenkins, a native of Leamington and a childhood friend of Ben Ainslie, is the world record holder for land speed record in a wind-powered vehicle, achieved in 2009 in the Nevada desert with a speed of 202.9 kilometers an hour. He's an entrepreneur who brought his engineering background and love of sailing to an enterprise called Saildrone, combining the revolutionary capabilities of autonomous robotic vehicles with the world's most sophisticated data gathering tools for use in the world's oceans. Sounds good? Let me begin with you, Andy. You're responsible for the evolution of this team's racing boat technology, and it's a tremendous challenge in itself to do that. So it would seem irrelevant to this part of your career, which has all been leading up to this great goal, to have to think about the notion of sustainability. Is there a moment when that came on your radar and became something that you cared about?
Yeah, well, I think obviously the early involvement of 11th hour racing with our team, all of a sudden it's there front and centre. What are these guys about? And I think that the team have been very happy to embrace the sort of day-to-day elements of sustainability, if you will, sort of recycling the rainwater, the new building that we inhabit, and in the technical world, we're driven very much by the imperatives of trying to win a yacht race, and so naturally, I guess you would say, oh well, I'll definitely do my best to be sustainable, but actually some of the things we're doing in our day-to-day work are actually sustainable of themselves and actually work very well for us. I mean, one of the examples is our what we call the virtual chase boat, where instead of having a large boat full of engineers following the boats around the solvent, we've said, well, that's actually, A, it's very hard to work in that environment, B, it takes up a lot of time for the guys doing it, and C, we can actually do a better job if we just beam the data back, invest in some infrastructure in the base, much like a Formula One pit wall, and so there we can do a sustainable job and we can do a better job. And I think the key thing is, pick up your point about having to invest to be sustainable. In that it has taken some investment in terms of the technology to do it, but now we've done it. We like the approach. We can see that going forward we can build on it. And obviously when we get to Bermuda, we can actually not have as many people on site in Bermuda. We can keep guys living at home, we can do less flights, etc., and we can do that because we have the sort of virtual chase boat system where data comes live from the boats back to the offices there. So I think most sailing teams are pretty selfish, but if given a gentle nudge, we can sort of slightly shift the meter from self-interest a bit more towards sustainability, and then go, oh, that really works pretty nicely.
So this is a solution for you that's operational as well as technical. Both forks kind of work for you.
Absolutely.
That's great. And your leadership is so important for the team. So Susie, you've been ahead of this sustainability question for more than a decade, working with Team Origin on a kind of prototype model, right, for what this America's Cup team is becoming. What would you say is the difference between the time when you were working on the plans for Team Origin and now? Has there been some sort of cultural shift?
I think having you guys on board is from the outset, like Andy said, it was before anybody else joined the team. There was the bear skeleton and the ideas of what was happening, and there was Ben and Joe basically, and the conversations we had early on with that. There wasn't really a team. So actually, before anyone joined the team, it was a sustainability that was already there. It was part of it. That was what's going on. So that for sure has made a huge difference to what we're about and how we started. And I think the fact that we've had a clean slate, really, the building, everything like that, we've had a really clean slate to start off and say, how do we do this? How do we do this sustainably? Where are we going to base ourselves? We want to all be together. Team Origin, everybody was around the place. You met half the team, you didn't meet the other half. And so having that and pulling everyone together and having that vision, if you like, of the base is amazing.
You've said that everybody was involved, that it took everybody's input to get there, and you've also said, I think nobody else has this, right?
For sure, and the story around the base is a fantastic one about collaboration, where right from the beginning we had the architects and we had the engineers and we had the guys who were going to build it, and then we had the team members looking in and going, well, that's not going to work because this is how it works, and we had the architects watching the videos of how you would, the boat lifting process and launching process, and so they completely understood that.
Mm-hmm.
And so right from the start you can drive efficiencies through that whole build process, and that collaboration and things, which is key in any kind of.
And then there's the BREEAM rating, and so all of this feeds into a system where you get
So we were exactly, so we
qualified.
Whilst we wanted to achieve a high standard of sustainability for the building, we were set a standard to achieve BREEAM Excellent, which is a sustainability rating for construction.
Yep.
And so that drove a lot of the design from the architects into the choice of materials, into how much insulation we put in the building, into the solar panels that we wanted, how are we going to get all that green technology and generate our own, electricity. And
What is the ISO 20121, and why is that important? You have that certification.
So 2012-1 came out of the 2012 Olympics, and is our operating standard of, so it's really sets our operations. It's a management system, and so for a lot of people that sounds a bit dull and boring. It's a lot of process, and was really driven. I mean, David's here, who was the kind of founder of and drove that through the London Games, and that set the standard for a sustainability management system for events. Now we've kind of embraced that and said, well, yes, we're about an event. We're all about getting to Bermuda, but actually we've got lots of small events, but we're also actually a team that's about getting to the event. So let's take that ethos and take that standard and apply that to our whole operation. So that's what we've done. Some place like Manchester United have it for their facility, but we've said no, we're going to do that across all our operations. So it's really, it goes from everything from who your stakeholders are and how you engage with them and how you bring them on board and how you listen to the community, all the way through to we turn the lights out and we'll look at our energy and we'll look at our waste.
So that's interesting. You have to look at the outcomes from it too, and it's great to have you here, Roy, to talk as a business voice, because all of this is a really nice idea, the sustainability idea, but if you don't have an economic base for it, and you're not going to ultimately save money, and there's not going to be some return, there's no point in doing it for many people. Do you find the world moving in the direction that I suggested it was in the beginning?
A little, but but making the money on it is very difficult. I think you really do have to compromise. There's no doubt. In the UK today, we get a subsidy, for example, with regards to producing power, etc., and that's kind of like the foundation in many regards as the business. But I guess where we're trying to evolve to is not relying on that, because that is a barrier really for us. So so for us, it's trying not necessarily to rely on those subsidies, but actually still producing renewable energies.
Tell us about the solar installation here at the base. Yeah, you planned it one way, it went another way, and now you actually have something that's working interestingly well. Yeah?
Actually, I just heard it. It was about 70% of the production on one of the days of the electricity usage was actually provided by the panels, which I think is tremendous. So that's kind of a good contribution. I believe it was planned at around 20% is what is being looked for. Ecotricity is providing the rest of the electricity when it's not.
Which is wind. Yeah.
Well, actually, they have actually. I think they have a couple of solar parks, but not much. But it's mainly wind. But at least all the electricity taken into the base is renewable, which is tremendous. I can honestly say when there's a focus on an event like today, though, or over this weekend, where kind of literally you're given very short deadlines. I mean, we've never put in a park or any installation in 19 days. We've kind of never done that before, but
the whole thing went up pretty fast.
Yeah, by the time that I guess the base was done, and then we were allowed to come in and put in the panels and get it connected and getting it producing, etc. It was because everybody wanted to do it, everybody wanted to help, everybody wanted to be a part of it, and so Quentin, one of our team here, is getting this done in 19 days is tremendous effort.
Well, now it's set the bar for you, so to speak. So, Richard, you're a childhood friend of Ben's, and I think you told me that he was always out training, which doesn't surprise me. And you were the friend who was always inventing things and trying things out and making things go fast. So it's very interesting where you've all sort of ended up. I wonder, how did you first imagine the Saildrones? And maybe you could describe to people exactly what these things are, what they look like, and what they're designed to do.
Yeah, sure. I guess link with Ben is kind of funny. I guess I subconsciously couldn't really ever compete with Ben, so I sort of designed a boat that didn't need sailors. More seriously, it was never planned. It was never like an idea I had a long time ago. It started off with the land yacht, which was trying to challenge an outright speed record, which was the most unsustainable thing, not in terms of materials, but in terms of a longevity. It's a record that once you achieve it, the project's over. And even though I looked really hard for commercial use of the technology while I was doing it to try and get a sponsor, I couldn't think of anything. It wasn't a wind power thing. I just couldn't work out how this boat was ever going to be used. So I finally got the record after 10 years of trying, and went on to do some consulting work. One of them is research ships in California. And I couldn't believe how expensive the research was and how these ships would cost a lot of money, and it's a big ship with a lot of people on, burning a lot of fuel. And I said to the scientists, why don't you do this autonomously with a robot or something? And they're like, well, it's impossible. So it's nothing like impossible to challenge me to do something. So we realized the wing was the perfect solution for a robot. It's very low power, very self-tending, self-steering, and set about designing a sailboat to try and not replace but augment ships. So you let ships do heavy lifting work and you let the robots do the sensing, which ships spend most of the time doing. So that's kind of how I got into it. And it is truly sustainable. The power for the vehicle comes from solar for the computers, and the propulsion is via wind. So it's really only corrosion and weed growth that stops it long term. And we're looking at 6 to 12 month deployments, come back for servicing, send them out again. So barring freak accidents or loss, which should be hopefully fairly rare, these things do last a very long time.
And the hull shape is based on what? There's a fixed wing and a hull, right? And they're all sizes, aren't they?
Yes, it's also totally scalable. It works at 2 meters or 10 meters or 100 meters. And the bigger it is, the more payload it has, the more panels. So you size them for the job they're doing. Our current sort of stock boat is 20 feet long, just under 20 feet, which is a sweet spot of enough size for panels, for power, enough payload for cargo or sensors. But it's small enough not to be a threat in the ocean. It's still a very small, fragile carbon fiber boat. They can't really do any damage to other seafarers. It has got AIS avoidance, so it will see and avoid an AIS target. It doesn't have active kind of visual LiDAR avoidance.
We'll talk a little more later about where these Saildrones are going and where they've been working. The first time I encountered one live was flying out of Honolulu, and I knew that you had one of your Saildrones coming from San Francisco all by itself, jibing down in a very narrow column of water where it knew where to go. And we looked for it. We took off and thought, where is it? It's 18 feet long. We're at 30,000 feet. You can't see it. It's very undetectable, but they're very, very strong, right? And they're sturdy, and they seem to go through every kind of condition.
Yeah, we can talk about what they've been through, but
yeah,
they're pretty robust.
So they're high performing. Let's talk to you, Andy, about performance and this link. Tell me a little bit more about sustainability. How does it translate into performance for these boats? Because this is a team about winning a race, ultimately. So how does that link to you in some way? Is there something that you can bring to that that's unique?
I think it's back to the point I made earlier that many of the techniques that we adopt are inherently sustainable, because we're in a situation where we want to develop performance of the boats, and the traditional way of doing that has been actually to build some prototypes, go out and sail them, and say, oh, we like that, we don't like that. And this is quite a time-consuming process. You know, there's particularly with the boats that we have now, it takes a team of 15 or 20 to get 2 boats in the water, launch it, get the wing up, retrieve, put them back in the shed. So there's a big push towards trying to do more numerical simulation and sailor in the loop simulation, again following the lead from the Formula One teams. I mean, Martin Whitmarsh at the back there, he was a pioneer in this field and sort of against all good advice. He started the simulation ball rolling at McLaren, and now teams spend, I suspect, more on their simulation efforts than they do on supporting the race teams. So, we can do stuff that actually starts to we can do stuff that limits our impact in terms of carbon footprint, in terms of using materials very readily to, and actually do a better job of developing performance, because the whole business of sailing a complete boat, and you say, oh, well, boat A is faster than boat B, but you don't actually know why. It might be a strange combination of things that that you can't work out, whereas you go into a simulation environment and you can kind of dissect in quite minute detail. So again, it's been, you know, we can be, you know, we can be sustainable, and we can do a better job.
Very good. That's sort of like a new kind of analysis. So Susie, I think it'd be fun for the audience to hear some of the specific implementations of sustainability at the base that you oversaw. And I also wanted to ask you, is food involved?
Yeah, we have food is always involved. It's quite important to our sailors.
Tell us about it.
And also a lot of other people there. But no, so we have a procurement code, and that's about everything so we can understand what we're buying and how we buy that and where stuff comes from and goes to, and that we can actually think about that. And also because part of locating here in Portsmouth and being local is that we can use a lot of local suppliers. So our food strategy and our food kind of vision and charter, if you like, is very much working with the guys who are doing the catering for us at the moment and buying locally. So they buy the fish come from Johnson's Fish, which are the guys right next to us on the camber.
Remember them.
Boats that kind of come in there. The veg all comes from South Sea Fruit and Veg, so they're very local as well. I think the meat comes from just a bit further up in Portsmouth. So it's all really local suppliers, and that was key to us to try and bring in as much local suppliers. I was chatting to Alan on our boat build team yesterday, and he's worked really hard to bring in as many, I think 40 or so local suppliers down at Greens, where they've been building parts of the boat and stuff down there, pulling all those local suppliers. So the procurement and the local suppliers and that engagement's really important. And other things around the base, we've all the lighting, we've got as much LED lighting in there, so the powering it ourselves is important with the solar and stuff, but actually let's reduce that load from the outset. And I think the fact that the percentage of what we're producing is increasing is because actually the building's performing probably better than we thought it was going to be performing. So we've got lots, and we're trying to work out at the moment how all the sensors work. We've got sensors for timers for the times of day we want the lights on and off and equipment on, and we've got sensors if you're moving or if the light levels that say they're all kind of a bit spaghetti at the moment. We'll get there and we'll
Doesn't
work
drive
it
you
out.
crazy?
Yeah.
You switching the lights on and off yesterday.
Yes, generally we switch them off and on. So there's a number of different things that we've got.
And water use? What are you doing with water
use? We have a rainwater filtration, rainwater system. So we have a tank that we'll use for the boat washing. It's the building isn't entirely finished yet, so that'll be hopefully cover all our outside water needs. We have, what Andy said about you throw a problem at the guys. There was when they lift the wing, there's a ballast of 200 litres of water, which every time they lifted the wing was dumped on the ground, and it was kind of like, I would probably do better than that. And you give them a little challenge like that, and they invented their little water butt and their little recycle loop system, and that water just goes round and round. So every time you lift the wing in and out, there's 400 litres a day every time they sail. So it's just really simple things, but sometimes it's spotting it and just throwing the challenge out, and they'll embrace it.
Everybody gets into the act.
Yeah.
So Roy, you work all over Britain, and even you have a project in Africa going on right now. What was compelling to you about investing in the project here in Portsmouth and with Ben Ainslie Racing? What brought you to the party?
We set up Low Carbon in 2010, and I joined from different industry, and at the centre of our company and the heart of the company was making an impact on climate change. And so that's where we gravitated to. That's where we focused. That's where all our energy has been. And actually, probably, regardless of love of sailing and all of those things, the Ben Ainslie team at the time when we met was really the first company that was pushing us harder than we were pushing ourselves. With regards to sustainability being at the core. Even even Susie's report, which is on the website, everybody should really take a read of it actually, because we're using that now as a bit of a yardstick for our teams, going, look, Susie's doing this, we really need to do it. And so it was, I think it was, again, when we met and when we got introduced to the team, it was already in the DNA, it was already in the core, it was already in those challenges that people are set, to do something different with the water, or the water bottles, or kind of etc. So I think it was just a very easy, natural fit for us, and the solar was putting the solar on the base, and I guess it's equivalent to powering 40 homes, equivalent to, so it's quite a scaled system. But that was just, in some ways, that was almost like a nice to have, because it was just, the whole engagement was just very good, because the ethos was the same. So I think that's how we got more involved, with the team as well.
Now, somebody said to me earlier, you look at solar panels a lot of times and they're blue on people's roofs. These are black. These are like the high performance solar panels.
Yeah.
How are they different?
Well, again, I think the team wanted to go that extra yard, actually, which kind of like produce something special, produce something different, produce something that was eye-catching, and also not interfere with the beautiful design of the building. So you can be in the visitor center, for example, and you look over the panels as opposed to them just getting in your way. Trying to find a panel that didn't have frames, because then it creates that visual impact as well. So your eyes taken to the frame as well. So again, it was really trying to find something that would work well aesthetically, but then hopefully people will see the panels. There's an east-west rotation on them. So typically when we put in solar panels, it's sort of south-facing.
Yeah.
But these are kind of east-west setups. So,
I noticed that.
Yeah.
So okay, that's interesting.
again, because trying to get as many panels in there as possible. I think it's 432 panels in the space to try and maximize the space, maximize the
Exposure too.
Yeah.
The weather here is so changeable. If you get morning sun and afternoon shade, you'll at least have gotten some solar.
Yeah, so we tried to pick all of that up, and as Susie said, over time we'll see what the performance is going to be. In time, we'll try and introduce batteries as well, but we're just going to see how that goes. See if we can kind of like store as well, and then anything that we export to the grid that's not used or any of the subsidies is then given to the 1851 trust. So Claire's very happy about.
Very good.
So all of the benefits then go back to the 1851 trust as well. So.
Excellent. Great. Well, your solar's working really well on the Saildrones, and you've got a Saildrone right now up in the Bering Sea, up in the Arctic Circle. You're going to go pick the two of them. You're going to pick them up next week. Why don't you tell us just briefly where have they been, and what conditions have they seen, and what kind of work have they been doing? It's all prototypes still, but it's pretty interesting and pretty promising.
Sure, yeah. So the first challenge was to prove they can actually survive in the ocean. So the first one went from Hawaii to San Francisco to Hawaii in 13. Took 34 days to get there. Averaged about 3.5 knots. So not the fastest, but it carries on going.
Steady.
There was no sensors on it. It was just a bare boat with a bare system. The next phase was to try and incorporate the ocean sensors. We went to the best oceanographic institutes in the world and said, what do you want to measure? And picked 20 different sensors that are kind of the backbone of oceanography. Covers 80% probably of different research topics. And tried to include them all. That's really difficult. It took us a lot longer to include the sensors than design and build a boat.
Makes
Every
sense.
sensor, different power supply, different communication protocol, different sampling frequency, and we can change all that remotely. So you can, every instrument's power cycled to save power. It takes measurements at different hertz ranging from 100 hertz down to 1 hertz. It filters those on board the boat and sends the filter data back. So that process was much more of a software, electronic challenge than a physical one. Took us a year and a half to do that, and then we started deploying them on science missions. And scientists are a very skeptical bunch, so just to give them a number doesn't mean they think it's a real number, it's a precise number. So at PMEL, who's a Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory, they're the engineers behind NOAA who choose and calibrate instruments. They choose what NOAA uses in the field. And they're kind of the gold standard for ocean science. So they have been scrutinizing our data since we started deploying them. In long story short, they have concluded that Saildrone measurements are more precise than the ship-based measurements. They followed 2 of our drones for 3 or 4 days in the Bering Sea, with their newest and greatest sampling ship, trying to get as close as they can, trying to replicate the measurements that we take. Essentially, our ones were, I mean, they're the same instruments, they should be the same, but a ship disturbs the flow as you sail through something, so the surface flux is the most interesting part for the scientist, how quickly the temperature and gas are absorbed by the ocean, and the ship kind of messes those all together and takes kind of an average mushy reading. The Saildrones is simply a foil in the water and a foil in the air, and it can sail through the environment and sample what's really there rather than a mix of it. So that was pretty exciting. We deployed them out of San Francisco a lot of test missions in the Pacific, around the Faroe Islands and in South Bay. We've had a vehicle in South Bay for over a year, just going around in circles, just on an endurance test, on the basis that if it fails, it just washed up in the mud, but it never failed. We deployed 2 drones out of the Dutch harbour. So everyone's seen the Deadliest Catch. It's one of the ports they deploy out of there, and it's really, truly the most brutal place I've ever been to in my life. It's
You're headed there again, aren't you?
on Monday, flying there Monday morning to collect them. I have to say, I really didn't think they'd survive this mission. It's, I think NOAA came up with what is the toughest mission we can give them, and it was to go through the Bering Straits into the Chukchi Sea and measure up there. We deployed out of the Dutch harbour, 45 knots of wind, so they had to beat out of the harbour in 45 knots, like truly terrible seas, breaking waves, and they survived. I mean, they got up to the Bering Straits, and actually NOAA chickened out. They never thought we'd make it that far. And because of the friction with Russia, now they decided not to send them through the strait, just in case one did break and drift into Russian waters. They'd have to go and collect it or something, and it'd be embarrassing. So we didn't actually go through the Bering Straits, but we could have done. And then we were going to collect them in Nome, but it turned out it was quicker and cheaper, and certainly a lot less carbon fuel being burned if we sailed them home rather than ship them home. So we sailed them back down to Dutch harbour, and I'm flying there to collect them on Monday. So truly, each vehicle's done 4,500 miles in 91 days.
You've also told me that they've been able to go to places to get data that ships can't go to.
Exactly. So one of the missions on the way was to map the Yukon Delta. So you have this very hot water coming out of the Yukon at 20 degrees C, full of mud and nutrients. It goes into the Bering Sea, which is at 1 degree or 2 degrees, and it's very clean and it's just full of ice melt. So how that mixing takes place is of great interest, and we were able to map that Yukon Delta. It's only about 10 to 20 feet water, average is 15-foot depth, muddy, very rough. So you physically can't take a ship in there to do that anyway. And when we were tasking it, we have a little web app so you can task it with your phone. There was no soundings or a chart, so I said to NOAA, like, we're using the wrong chart, can you give us some more numbers? And they came back and said that area hasn't been mapped since 1899 with a lead line. So,
We're not going there.
So that's the first time anyone's been there. But we were doing geological and surveying rather than precision depth, which we haven't got a precision depth just yet, but we can easily fit that. But yeah, you can do mapping as another great use for technology, and you can go places where a real ship couldn't go.
Yeah, all from sailing. You know, a lot of the change that we're going to see in the next decades is coming from the rapid technological change that you've been part of in your career, Andy. What are some of the breakthroughs that you might expect to see in coming years? Is there something on the drafting table you can talk about?
No, I'm not sure there's anything super duper coming down the pipe. I was chatting to a journalist this morning, and he was looking at it and saying, "Oh, we had to completely recalibrate your scientific mind." I said, "No, you're looking at stuff that's really sort of World War I flying ace technology. The engineers and physicists could look at the boat on the apron today, and they would understand exactly how it sailed. And so this whole business of being able to sail a boat like that and sail it fast has kind of been not a serendipitous process, but finally the materials have caught up with what we thought we would like to design. So now you can give it flesh and realise really fantastic performance. I think the challenging thing from my point of view is trying to get technology into the wider world. I mean, in a previous life, I was involved with some projects to do with the natural propulsion of ships. How can we use sails or wings or whatever to augment propulsion? Can we reduce emissions in areas that are close to shore and stuff? And it was my experience that you would kind of talk to people at the boardroom level, and they would be very happy to have screensavers of these streamlined ships with wing sails on, and it was lovely, and everything was all smiles. And yeah, that's great technology, super report. I can see that's going to work, but if you had the misfortune to go into the engineering shop and stand in front of some guy who was going to be faced with the challenge of welding one of these things onto a ship that he had to maintain, he was not that enthusiastic about it. All he could see was sort of a throwback to sort of the Captain Hornblower and square-rigged ship. So there's it's somehow to get these new technologies into place. I think you have to find some way of accelerating the education process, or we have to somehow wipe out quite a large layer of middle management somewhere to
or people have to die off.
Well, I mean, we're all busy doing it, but so it was it's just a salutary experience to see this massive leap from what's possible to actually what you can persuade a bunch of guys to do when actually their interests are best served by not having anything to do with this stuff, because they know it's just going to be trouble initially.
There's a power in inertia. The sport of sailing has often been portrayed as elitist, particularly in the high-profile racing that goes on in the America's Cup. And when we link that activity with the wiser use of energy and natural resources, Susie, how do we engage the broader public in a discussion that can include everybody? You're working here in Portsmouth with the community. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're connecting the dots?
Yeah, we are, and we've tried to, we want to be part of Portsmouth and be part of what the city's doing and, trying to do, and just as trying to be good neighbours. So you can start off with, yes, we engage people, it's a big change on the Canberra to what was there before. Some people go, it's fantastic, the best thing for Portsmouth. Others will go like, we quite liked it the way it was. Luckily for us, most of them absolutely fantastic, engaging, the rest of it every day. I mean, you saw them today when they're launching the boat. There's a little arena of people
village.
watching. and we can go and engage with them and just give them a bit of information about what's going on. So that's really immediate. That's people who are watching, who are there in it. I was at the school yesterday talking to them and about various things, and get engaged, get involved. We've got the visitor centre, so the 1851 Trust very much about engaging the kids and setting up that visitor centre in the base, and then bringing kids through and inspiring them. Not just about sailing. So yes, very important, get kids on the sailing, get them active. RYA, we've got lots of people from RYA here today. It's that, and I spent 8 years of my life working with them and getting kids out in the water, massive, important and engaging. But actually the America's Cup team and the platform that we've got here to engage them on design, technology, innovation. And it's an amazing platform to get that next generation involved, and you don't have to wait for, the likes of Andy and that to keel over and park it. They've got a lot to give, so far too optimistic. But so from my side as well, we can take the stuff that's coming out of the design team and we can really drive some innovations across, industry and really make those changes and things. And engaging people at all different aspects, whether that's industry, whether it's the community, whether there's lots of different angles that we can keep tapping into and taking really what Andy's team are very focused on getting that boat going fast and getting it across the line first. But there's masses of technology and the materials and things like that. We've got JJ, who's our first intern, so we've got links with the university. So he's just doing his first year in chemistry and he's spending 3 months with us looking at sustainable composites. So hopefully I haven't completely bored him with that, and then after 3 months he's got, actually this is exciting, this is actually I can start changing, he's already ahead of the game anyway, but so we can engage people in various things. We've got lots of work experience opportunities, we've got apprentice programs, we've got our first apprentices starting not just in the boat building, which you might think would be the natural thing, but in the marketing team. So across the board we've got lots of different ways of engaging the next generation.
And the base will be here when the racing is over, or before the racing starts again.
People in it, all sorts of different angles on it.
So just sort of chip in there and say, well, I started my career as a naval architect, but I very quickly had to transmogrify myself into a mechanical engineer, which is disappointing for there's quite a big rivalry between the naval architects and the ginger beers, as we used to call them. And I think that's one of the things when you actually get down inside one of these boats, there are huge opportunities for guys who just want to get into the nuts and bolts of hydraulic systems or automation, that in a way that the boats from America's Cup in monohulls, it was it was super simple. It was super simple stuff. But now you could, we're going to have a huge team of, a lot of disciplines: electronics, hydraulics, electromechanical actuators. So in terms of pushing a cool piece of hardware out there that can engage with a very wide spectrum of people,
and it happens
it's
to be a boat.
fantastic thing.
Yeah. So Roy, you're all about new models and things coming in the future, and kind of a progressive thinker, and you've got some interesting projects that involve animals and bees in your portfolio. I wonder if you'd like to talk about that a little bit.
Well, when we put anything into the landscape, we try to also give back as well. So a lot of our solar parks have sheep on and wild meadows and wildflowers, and I think we've got now over 2 million bees on our sites. It's just and actually I think we're going to be providing honey to the base now, and so
Nice.
which is quite fun. But the almost connecting to what Andy said as well, for us, many of the pieces are already there and they already exist, and what we're trying to do is kind of like join them all up. So there's technologies that exist, and by putting a bit of attention to them, then we can create different solutions. So I mentioned earlier we've got a concentrated solar project, for example, which is in North Africa, and just uses existing technology. And there's one existing today in the US, and it's just a series of mirrors and a big tower, but behind it is just a steam engine, really. I mean, it's just, and so we're playing with that, and it's really the grid and the connectivity of the grid back to the mainland that really needs kind of like connecting into that. So it's trying to get all of the pieces of the puzzle and bring them together. We have a project in Exeter. We're trying to take all of Exeter off grid, and which kind of like sounds kind of strange, but it can be done, because when we put a new building in such as this in a town, we should be looking at how do you not make an impact with that building? How do you not draw power? How do you not make a you produce your own electricity, or you can actually give to the grid, etc.
So you're looking at this as a very integrated approach to development in terms of energy, building, wildlife.
And you referenced it earlier, is finance as well. So actually in this event we've invited some of the biggest pension funds in the world are actually coming in to actually see some of the things that are happening here. Because what we're trying to do is connect them to put money into renewables, and they're not. There's a very big pension fund in Scotland, there's one in Korea, that don't do enough in renewables, and we're trying to show them there's a way of doing it. We're setting up a foundation right now, it's the Compo Nation, that we're actually, all we're doing is connecting their capital to the projects, and we're then not involved in it. We're actually done it as a foundation because we think it's too important for profit. So, but it's trying to connect all of the dots, really, and it's not reinventing anything in many ways, maybe like the same.
But catalytic nonetheless.
Yeah, exactly. It's just trying to bring the pieces together. So.
Yeah, great. Richard, what do you think that life could look like for the foiling catamarans after the America's Cup? Is there a future for these contraptions?
Often after something's precise as the cup, once the race is over, the rule changes and these platforms don't really have a use anymore. So traditionally they either grow mould or cut up and put in landfill. So we were actually given, I'm not supposed to say who it was, but we were given a very large black 72-foot catamaran in the Bay area, sort of donated to Saildrone to give it a better use. What we've done with that one is cut it up and utilise the hulls and the beams in a very different configuration. So no longer a catamaran. Basically make two large monohulls, and they're going to go and do fisheries policing in the Pacific. So in the atolls that the Americas just declared one of the biggest marine sanctuaries around all the atolls, and they're currently being fished out by the Chinese factory fishing boats because no one's policing them. The Coast Guard can't afford to go there to see who's fishing. They know it's happening. They know they're destroying the wildlife there, but they can't do anything about it. So I'm not saying we can prosecute China, but we can at least go and prove who's there and what they're doing. And to do that, you need a kind of big, powerful boat to get in, to see them, and then get out before they run you over. We're doing it with the US Coast Guard, kind of a US Coast Guard Sentinel, which can, and they love it because they can't afford to do the policing and the fisheries work. So yeah, so putting these vehicles, and obviously it saves us a huge amount of time and money and having to make a hull. And any one of these hulls, the hull shape for us is kind of irrelevant because just be a floating, long, skinny thing that can go out and carry a payload. What are you doing? 10 knots. So so they really kindly donated their old boat. So any boat that ever has a no home, we will gladly take them and turn them into a science vehicle that can go and do some good.
So you're inventing this as you go along, and you're taking the opportunities that come. Do you have some long-term vision that you see for the role of these autonomous sailing vessels to help connect people back to the oceans and their well-being and so on?
It's really evolving so quickly that and the scientists themselves are grappling with how to use these tools. For the first time, they've been able to get data real time. It's never really happened with any autonomous unit, like a little drifter or submarine. They deploy it, 3 months later pick up the thing, if they find it, download the data, and they found out something really interesting happened 2 months ago, but they only got one data point in that time, whereas we get that data real time, we have alarms, it literally texts me if levels goes beyond a certain threshold, which you preset, and then you can log on, you can go back and task it and do, they call it adaptive sampling, which is really unique. So even the scientists are trying to work out the best way that they can utilize this technology.
But your iPhone is an important tool for you.
It is definitely. It's a web app, so any browser, any platform will work. But yeah, it means you can follow it anywhere, you can look at it. And
He thinks of these as his children, just so you know that. Oh, got a text, so I've got to answer this.
But you, I was saying the other night that I've learned so much about parts of the ocean by monitoring these drones. I've never sailed to the Pacific personally or in the Bering Sea, but I spent probably hundreds of hours looking at data coming back and looking at charts and soundings and
Photos.
Yeah, and photos. We've got cameras. It sends back, panoramas every hour, or whenever you ask it to. So I've learned a huge amount about the ecosystems of these areas without actually going there. And if there's somewhere we could, give a drone to a schools, universities, and they can take it as their drone, not that they get to task it, but they get to log on and see where it goes and it travels and follow its journey. Maybe that inspires a new generation of kids to work out, no, I didn't know there are thousands of islands in the Pacific, and there's literally thousands. So, and I'm a sailor, so if you can inspire these children to learn about those areas and the fish and the ecosystems that are being destroyed by other people or even just climate change, whatever it is, I think that could be a huge benefit to everyone.
And you hired programmers, as I recall, who were Hollywood people?
Yeah,
into your
from film, they did The Matrix. So
they did The Matrix. They work for him now.
And they're super intelligent guys, and it's that level of data. The next challenge for us is the big data challenge. Like, I thought that was a plug-and-play solution, and not at all. Getting the 2 drones in the Bering Sea have each taken 100 million samples each in 90 days.
Wow.
And just dealing with that much data and where you put it, and it's very spatial, it's very 3D data and time series oriented as well. So, it's just how do you deal with that much data and how do you process it and give it to the scientists? Most scientists can just about use Excel, but that's kind of the limit. So we're doing, 3D, visualizing data for them to look at, so it increases the time scale which they can look at the stuff and process it.
You're going to need a data center with one of his solar concentrated things right there, maybe in the Nevada desert where you set your record. So we're going to ask you for questions if you have any, but before we do that, I wanted to just tell you we've had these bags made for everybody to take. They're downstairs when you go down for the after party. They're made from sails from one of my own sailboats named Cellini, Swan 80. And other fabrics come from what part of the kit?
A variety of sailbags.
Sailbags. We've recycled them to make them into these nice little bags, which are great for carrying your computers around. There's a water bottle in there for you that you can refill. And just don't forget to pick that up or take one home from downstairs. So anybody thinking about anything for the panel that we haven't discussed or that you're wondering about? I think we covered a lot of interesting topics. Yeah.
Yeah, so Craig Simmons, so I've been various people know me from various other world-class events, mainly around carbon. But I'm just wondering, it's great stuff that's happening on your team. How are you going to infect the other teams with sustainability? And Bermuda as well, which is unlike San Francisco, not as amenable to some of these.
And there were knee socks there, so good luck.
Asking me.
You're the guru.
Well, I was just thinking maybe Richard's boat could tow some nets and get some ocean plastics around there and do something with
Picking up plastics is really hard.
There's a lot of it there.
There's a lot of it there, but just when you get it, what do you do with it? Like, you get tanks to come get it. But no, measurement is a big thing. I found out today there's really not much weather data from Bermuda at all. So us sailing around, and we're talking to Susie today about reaching out to the Ocean Institute there and finding out what, I don't know anything about Bermuda. I sailed through it as a kid, but I don't know what challenges they face in the ocean, and maybe if they've got some pressing, I'm sure they have, but finding out what they are Ooh, there's some link up and sending some drones around Bermuda, which identifies and tries to solve some of the environmental issues they've got there, and provides weather data to all teams. It could tick a few boxes, but that's something we literally hashed out 5 minutes before we came on stage here. So yeah, there's
But that's the
definitely
sort of thing you can create a collaboration on with all the teams. If there's ideas and things that we're doing that we think the other teams would benefit globally, then let's, if we work out, actually great, we
I've
can
got
all
the
recycle the...
I've got the solution. We just
Yeah.
win the America's Cup in 2012 one and bog your uncle.
Anybody else? Sure, yeah.
David Starks,
Yes.
formerly of London 2012. One of the great themes on sustainability is transparency. On the other hand, you're trying to win a race and you don't want your competitors to know all the little tricks and benefits of it. So how do you reconcile using sustainability to help make the boat go faster and get an edge on people and also live up to the values of transparency?
I don't think there's any kind of conflict there, because what we do with our use of materials and our policies, etc., is entirely separate from what we hold on our computers about how we design stuff. So I don't. I'm not concerned about that to any degree. I think one of the, to pick up the point about how does this push out into the wider world. I think the fact that that our suppliers are obliged to meet certain sustainability criteria, etc., is a good way of doing that, because the America's Cup is quite quite strong in terms of the money that flows in at the top. It flows out a long way into the surrounding community. So if you can make sure that money flows to people who are working to a good sustainability standard, then that's good. And the people that work with us are generally the best people around, so their reputation's enhanced. They get more work, so there's more people employing companies who are working at a good level. So I'm not concerned about the transparency thing.
I think we'll also find that the teams will see the benefits of it. And if, going back to your point about where have we changed from Team Origin, with Team Origin days, the companies that we were talking to in terms of sponsors, it was something that they wanted the box ticked. It made them all feel comfortable. Great. Some of them actually thought it was a kind of platform they could activate. Actually now, the majority, most, all our sponsors, Land Rover, for example, big sustainability thing, they've just won a sustainability award for cutting carbon in their build of their boats. They're 50% of their aluminium's all recycled. So they've got loads of stuff actually and that's probably in the last 3 years. So I think from the sponsor side, actually, yes, they all want to activate around the technology side, the innovation side, environmental innovation. It drives the efficiency, the sustainability of the business. From the finance, if you're winning on the finance side, you're probably winning also on the environmental side. And I think that's where the teams will all start going, hey, hold on, all these companies that are coming on board. And from my point of view, if we can, it's fantastic what you just said earlier, if we can encourage them to go that little bit further, or those who maybe aren't on board at the moment go, oh, hold on, all these other guys are, then, so we've got a massive stretch, whether it's up or whether it's down, to encourage people to change ways. And I think other teams there's been a step change already from Team Origin days to here.
You're also measuring what you're doing, aren't you? And so there will be
we are being
reports along the
transparent.
way that tell what we're trying to
To
do.
go through the business to
Yeah.
collect all the data.
Maybe not that much data, but run.
So you've talked a lot about changing attitudes and cultural change, which is notoriously, we all know, notoriously difficult, whether it be engineers or other teams or anybody. But we've got an opportunity with young people, right, through the trust, to shift some of these, and I suspect it's slightly easier to shift some of those attitudes the younger people are. So what should we be doing, perhaps that we aren't doing? What should we be looking at, using the power of the cup to change some of these attitudes when we connect with young people in this area and Bermuda or in the country as a whole? What opportunities do you think there are?
We've got to just open the door to them. And I think it's not just, sailing and water might not be a natural thing for all of them. But actually, it's not, there's there's 5 sailors on the boat, you know, in the next couple of days, yet the team is about 70 strong. So there's masses of opportunity, whether that's people who are supplying the food in the base, you know, and catering, or whether it's people who are, you know, cleaning the base, or whether it's the guys who are doing the security around, or risk assessment. There's masses of different jobs and opportunities, and I think for us to engage with those schools and those kids and take that out there and to make them realise that actually there's a lot of things to be excited about and to get on board with, and it's getting out there, isn't it, and using the power of the cup and the excitement that an event like this generates to engage and to bring them down, to get them on board. The visitor centre will be a great opportunity to bring kids through and talk about these different things, you know. If you have the Saildrone data up there, you can talk about, you can visualise, you know, different parts of the world. You can get them to get stuck in and hands-on, and hopefully get some of that infectious, you know, excitement that is around the cup.
Sort of force of habit. It's been an experience for me moving to California. Like, you wouldn't imagine now not wearing a seatbelt in a car or kids not wearing a safety helmet. Just because they're made to do it, they grew up thinking that is the norm. And I moved to California and plastic bags are banned. You know, where I live, you can't get a plastic bag in a grocery shop. And immediately, like, what do I put my groceries in? Like, you're carrying them out. But within a few months, you know, you're used to it and you take it back to the shop, and it's just because it's illegal, you can't do it. So I think if you just adopt those principles and bring up the kids with that's how we do it, it's a bit like after being on a boat for a long passage and always remember, you know, when you save water and you come back and have a shower and you turn it off and you really quickly get accustomed to just wasting water again, but at least you for a time you have that logic. And I think just adopting the principles for the next generation, they'll grow up thinking that's normal. I think kind of, I would say, a big part of it.
Yeah, and the 1851 in the visitor centre as well, you also get really close to the panels, so you don't typically, you know, we don't typically get the opportunity to take people into our solar pods, etc. So literally right outside the window, getting the opportunity for people to see it and dragging children through there is good.
Capturing their imagination somehow. Yeah.
David Hutchinson, University of Portsmouth. I feel a bit of a fraud asking this question given the other people in the room, but I'll ask it anyway. It's amazing the journey that Panelists Racing Land Rover BAR have been on since they came to Portsmouth, and just seeing the accomplishments from what's obviously a group of people that are very up for a challenge, are very competitive, and really want to innovate and do more. And that whole sustainability piece is kind of about doing less. And I just wonder, given the other things that are happening in the Saildrone region, whether anybody's thought about sort of a circular economy support boat, or just linking the whole life cycle piece in with all of this stuff.
Yes, we think think about it. We think about it a lot, but as you say, we've done quite a lot in 18 months. But now we're in a position where we're just starting to take baby steps, where we have a process when we're moulding the carbon fibre parts that we need for the race boat. It's very important that the mould that we make, the mould that we cook the hulls in has the same thermal expansion as the hull that we're making. So we can't make a steel mould and put a carbon thing in it. So all of a sudden you're making a mould which is using 5 times as much carbon as there is actually in the piece. And you go, you know, traditional way would be to go to the shop and buy 6 times the amount of carbon you needed for the race boat, use 4/5 of it in the mould and toss that in the skip, and then say, well, that's a rather nice piece we've made. But now, because we can start to recycle carbon, we can either capture the offcuts, or we can actually recapture stuff that's been used in the past. We can make the mould out of the recycled stuff, and it doesn't matter that it's not super duper in terms of strength and stiffness. All that we actually needed from it was the fact that it expanded at the same rate as the piece that's in the mould. So we can start to do that. So we're very starting to think about the circular economy, because that's actually the real payback. As far as I can see, I think it's quite easy to take little bits and say, oh, we did a really good job on that, but actually it used a battery that took heaven knows what to construct, and will be a mission to recycle. So we're starting to.
And I've got taking that bit a bit further. That was, you know, we found that, and you can, well, as soon as you start modelling or monitoring how much materials go in, and we know from Andy's team exactly what's on the boat, and we can see that, you know, that wastage area in there and things. So we started collecting all that data, and what JJ's been working with us on is to develop a little model that within there that actually eventually, hopefully, becomes something that designers can use and take up front and then assess all different types of materials. So we're getting more and more recycled materials, different types of resins that can be, you know, reformed and reclaimed at different temperatures and things. So the industry is changing and going a long way. And so by creating this model that we can look at, you know, the construction phase, then that has a weight implication, and recycled materials take different amounts of resin. So you put 3 times as much resin, you might as well have used the virgin fibres at the start. So at least we can start looking at that. Is it better to use a resin we can source locally, or look at fly from China? You know. So we can put all that in the system, and we can then start looking at the construction. We can look at the use phase, because if it goes into a support boat or a rib or something like that. I mean, the fuel that goes into the ribs, it's a massive chunk of our carbon footprint, but that's also our cost to us. So, you know, by the virtual chase boat idea, getting people off the water, but also actually can we make those things as efficient as possible, is huge for us. And that has a huge implication, therefore, in the industry. And then at the end of it, what are we going to do with the boats at the end? Yeah. Question in my mind is, sure, that's in Andy's as well, what are we going to do with them at the end?
Going to sell them for an enormous price.
Sell them in the put them in a museum when we win the cup, all this good stuff. Now we're going to give them to Richard, so we're in good shape. So it's looking
No,
good.
you keep offering to give stuff away. It's a good job Martin's gone.
So, well, great, everybody. Thank you so much for participating in this event. I really thank you all for taking the time to come and share your thoughts with us today. And thank you all for being here. We're going to go downstairs and mingle a little bit longer together. And don't forget to pick up your bags. And we'll see you downstairs. Thanks.